Welcome to the Gila River Valley. This was a very important area for prehistoric cultures and pottery making about 700 years ago. So today I've come here to look for clay. Specifically, I'm looking for a brown alluvial clay, such as the prehistoric people who lived in this area would have used to make a lot of the beautiful pottery that came from here back in those days. I'm here on the north side of the Gila River, and today I'm going to be traveling along it from west to east, looking for brown alluvial clays. I'm going to be taking samples to take home and test, and I'm going to show you how I go about locating clay and how I kind of figure out if it's worth taking home and some of the tools I use. So come along with me, learn a little bit about finding and collecting wild clay. So the number one thing I'm looking for as I drive around these back roads is the soil, the dirt on or next to the road. And that's my main indicator, because when I'm doing 35, 40 miles an hour on these dirt roads, you've got to learn to kind of judge what you're looking at and whether or not you're looking at clay. So one of the things I look at is tire tracks. Places where the soil on the roadside has been compressed into a shape, either a cow track or a human footprint or a car track, even where the road grader has pushed up soil. If it forms into solid chunks, then that tells you there's clay in it. And right in this area, there's a bunch of these really hard where it's been pushed up into a shape by, I don't know if this was by a tire or the road grader or something, and then it's dried and it's just almost as hard as a rock. But the funny thing is, if I turn it over, it's damp on the other side. It's very, very gritty. So it has a lot of clay in it, but it also has a lot of grit. I'm afraid if I wanted to make this into pottery, it might work real good, but I'd have to clean out some of that grit. So I'm looking for something a little purer, although this obviously would make pottery, because like I said, places where it's been pushed into a form and dried, it's super hard. So that's a good indicator. I think I just want something a little purer than this, because that'll save me some labor in the end. That's one of the reasons I look for clay on the sides of roads, because it's a lot less work to pick up clay on the side of a road than it is to hike in. Although, I've done that and I know people that do that. One of the other things I look for as I'm out looking at that soil to see if it has clay is that crackled texture. And you can see on the ground in this pile I'm sitting on, there is a crackled texture, even though it isn't fully dry. In fact, the soil under the surface is quite wet. That crackled texture is appearing. That tells you that there's a high clay content in this soil. So I took a little ball of this soil and I just wet it. And you can knead it in your hand. It has a nice plasticity to it. So I think this has quite a bit of clay in it. And again, like a lot of the soil I've looked at so far this morning, there is quite a bit of silt and other grit in it. But you have to add temper to your clay anyway, so some of that is acceptable. And I think I could almost form something out of this. So I think I'm going to take a sample of this home and I'm going to run it through like a screen just to pull out a little bit of that grit and see if I can make a usable clay out of this. Because as you can see, it's quite plastic. It has good strength. It's able to stand up. So I'm going to get a sample of this, and this will be my first sample this morning, and then we'll continue on east on the valley, and I'm sure we'll find more as well. Now I'm only collecting a Ziploc bag's worth of clay at each location today because I don't need a ton of this. I just need enough to run a test to see if it's good clay. And then, if it turns out to be decent, I'll come back and get more. But I plan on collecting at least 10 or 15 different samples today, so I don't need a whole ton of clay at home. I just need enough to test, and so this will be more than enough. The other trick I'm doing today is I'm numbering the bags so I know where they came from, and then I'm snapping a picture with my phone of each of the bags in the location where I collected them. This will not only remind me of the place where I collected the clay, but also when you take a picture with your phone, it automatically captures the GPS coordinates of that location. So then I can always go back, look at those pictures, and grab the GPS coordinates. So that way, even if I don't remember where that sample came from, or I can't tell by the picture, I can locate exactly where it is on the map. The Safford Valley has a long history of pottery production.
Plainware pottery was first produced here around 300 AD. The first decorated ware was Mogollon red on brown types that started to be made here around 700. In the following centuries, the Safford Valley came under the influence of nearby cultural centers, with the people who lived here emulating aspects of both the members' culture, centered 120 miles to the east, and the Hohokam culture, centered 140 miles to the west. Studies have shown that both members black on white and Hohokam red on buff pottery was manufactured in this valley in the 1000s AD. In the late 1200s, Kayenta Pueblo immigrants came from far northern Arizona and began to settle in the Safford Valley. They brought with them their traditional redware polychrome that archaeologists call Maverick Mountain polychrome. Up until this time, the Safford Valley, although agriculturally rich, had never been culturally significant in its own right. But by the early 1300s, it was Safford's time to shine. At that time, the Salado phenomenon was sweeping the southern Southwest, and the Safford Valley was in the geographic center of that. From the early 1300s until the valley was depopulated by the Great Calamity in the early 1400s, a great deal of Salado polychrome was made here and exported all over the Southwest. It looks like this irrigation ditch flooded during the summer monsoon season and left a layer of deposited clay all along the banks and in the ditch. So this looks like pretty decent clay, and this may be very similar to what the natives were using, so I'm collecting it. The problem with these seasonally deposited clays like this is that with every flood, the quality of the clay can change. So if I really liked it and I came back next year, I may find the clay substantially different than the clay I collected this year.
This looks really good. It's got a crackly texture, feels like clay in my hands. It's got that angular chunks that it breaks into. It has all the signs of a decent clay. This isn't exactly the alluvial clay I was looking for, in that these layers like this are much older than what we find on the floodplain, and they're probably lacustrine layers like old lake bed clay, but I'm just, I'm not a geologist. I wanted to take a second today to talk to you about how I know where I can dig clay. When I'm out like this, how I know who owns the land and whether it's legal to dig the clay. So for most of today, I've been working along roadsides, and roadsides are usually pretty good because usually it's like a county road or state highway, and those agencies don't really care if you take a little bit of dirt. Now, when you're out in the country like this, away from the roads, it becomes a little more important to know who owns the land. And I use an app called OnX Hunt, and this isn't sponsored or anything. I have no affiliation with the company that makes this app, and it's a subscription service. I think I pay $40 a year to have all the land ownership information for 2 states. And I chose Arizona and New Mexico for those 2 states because that's usually where I'm looking for clay and minerals. Anyways, I can go to that map. It'll show me exactly where I'm at, and then it'll show all the land ownership so I can see that I'm on BLM land. And on BLM land, it's usually legal to take some minerals home with you. So for example, I'm taking this Ziploc bag full of clay off of this bank. I haven't damaged any of the natural resources. I haven't disturbed any plant life or anything. So keep that in mind when you're out like this. You don't want to be like digging holes in a meadow or someplace where you're really disturbing the environment. So a cut bank like this on a stream or on a road is a great place where you can dig a little clay without damaging the environment or disturbing any plants or animals. I've got 4 bags of clay and a bag of salt, but it's only, 3 o'clock, I think, so we've got lots of time. 3 o'clock?
Yes, 3 o'clock, 3:02.
It's only 3 o'clock. I've still got a little more valley to go and a little more time before it starts getting dark.
On the side of the road here is another hill of not floodplain clay. But honestly, the proof is in the pudding. So I'm just going to collect it and see what I can make of it before I judge it.
So like a lot of the other clays I've collected today, this is not really an alluvial clay. Again, maybe lake bed like lacustrine clay, I'm just guessing, but this is not exactly what I was looking for. I do know that the natives in this area were using some alluvial clays. At least I believe that's what I read in some archaeological reports. So I can double check that when I get home. What I know for sure is that they were using brown clay as their basis. And this clay is, you know, a little maybe greenish gray, but I found that a lot of these greenish gray clays from southeast Arizona will fire to a pretty common brown color. So don't judge it until you see it fired. This is clay number 6 now. I was hoping to get at least 10 samples today, and it is 3:45. So I don't know, it gets dark pretty early these days. I might have to knock off by about 4:30, 5 o'clock. I haven't seen any real good alluvial clay since those ones I collected first thing this morning. Just everything out on the floodplain has all been kind of plowed and turned under and everything, so there's no real layers, you know, where there would be pure clay. It's all been mixed together from plowing and digging, and a lot of that farmland has all been leveled, you know, so that it's perfectly level, and so all the layers have been kind of cut into and turned in, and so there's just not a lot available. I was hoping that here on the north side of the valley it was less developed, because most of the towns in this valley are on the south bank of the Gila, on the other side of the river from here. But what I found is just a lot of the same. You know, the agricultural lands are on both sides of the river, obviously, and most of that floodplain is just all dug up and plowed. And so not only are a lot of the ruins gone, they've all been turned under. You know, they're all out where those cotton fields are today. So those ruins are gone. But possibly a lot of the clay they were using is gone as well. All right, Tanya, did you have a good day?
I did. I had fun.
We were out here all day. It's 4:30. The sun's just about to set behind Mount Graham. So although it's probably, you know, a 10-minute video for you, literally we left our house at like 7 o'clock this morning. So all day driving up the valley and exploring. We found 6 clays and 1 salt. Now, I didn't show you the salt because that was a different subject and I wasn't sure you'd be interested. So last year, I was trying to use salts as fluxes to get paints, mineral paints to stick. So that's what I'm going to use this salt for. If you want to learn more about that, I'll put that video about using salts as fluxes right over here. You can go check that out. Thanks for coming with us today. We'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.